Hi, Nicole. Hi, Melvin.
Afternoon.
Good afternoon. I'm sorry that we never connected following the last meeting.
Yep, no, I think I was able to get an answer. Yeah, I was
Okay.
meaning to text you back, but yeah, I think we're good to go.
Okay, cool.
What's up, Chris?
How's it going?
I got to
Yeah.
change my view.
It's good. Sorry about all the emails. I think we got it. We with all these different committees and stuff. It was so Ed and I actually presented on it, and then Kira was like, "Hey, I did that for the Reimagining Youth Justice." So everything is really just going together. So she'll present at the next one, and then I'll end up jumping on a little late because the JJCC DJJ subcommittee is at 12:15 to like 1:30. So, but she'll be there, and then Director Randall, my field director, he'll be there too.
Sounds good. Yeah, I know it can all run together. And when you mentioned that at the top, I was like, yeah, that's probably what happened. Because I was like, I remember you guys telling us, and I don't remember anybody else from the department being here on that. But I was like, who knows? Maybe it happened at a meeting, that I missed, or I don't know. But yeah, I could definitely see how that can happen. So it's all good. As long as the information gets out there. And again, most people have heard it. So hopefully just a quick run through, maybe a question or two, and then we're on to the actual sort of substantive programs.
Sounds like a plan.
And for anybody who doesn't know what we're talking about the diversion meeting next week, where we're actually going to have folks who are running diversion programs sort of talk about those programs and how they operate, so that we can get a feel for that and a feel for any sort of questions or how that might sort of yield language in terms of recommendations coming out of the diversion subcommittee.
Hi, everyone. I think I just said hi to Nicole and Melvin earlier. I was having my limited speaker view, so I didn't see we had other folks on the call. I figured maybe we'll wait until 3:05, see if we have a few additional members of the subcommittee join.
Well, in the meantime, Jeff, how is life? How's fatherhood, man? I remember you getting ready to have a baby around the time that we started you as chair, and I haven't heard or seen anything else. But how's it been? And particularly, I guess most of what you've known as normal, I guess, has been the pandemic in terms of that. So how is that going? If I may.
Yeah. So it's a beautiful thing, for sure. I have loved being daddy. That role is just the best. And our baby is going to be 17 months tomorrow. And she's just climbing up on everything, using improvised little stair to get onto the couch to go to the next. Oh, wow. So we're on our toes, and yeah. And my partner, my wife's mother, is part of our little group, which is really a blessing to have her part of our circle and being able to be with our little one just about every day, which is great. Yeah. So thanks for asking, Chris. Yeah, it's been a really, really nice thing, and starting to have a little bit more outside exposure, things like that. All sorts of judgment calls, right? But
wait until they turn 3. I have a 3-year-old right now, so
it gets more complicated, huh? I mean, the playground pull must be even more intense at 3, the desire to go there.
it's beyond the being able to choose the outfit for them phase.
Negotiations.
Well, definitely enjoy it because time flies. So my son's going to be 16 in 2 weeks and my daughter will be 14 in July. And it seems like just yesterday, we were at the park on the swings and doing all that kind of stuff. And now I hardly ever see my son. I just hear voices coming out of his room from video games and stuff. And so
I have a 15-year-old daughter too, so I'm kind of going through both sides.
Yeah, right. I am cherishing this time, and I know that, I'll have to be learning as each phase comes. But yeah, that's got to be real challenges and blessings also at those ages with COVID in particular, and just kind of the restrictions there, what that must mean during the time. But yeah. I sometimes forget that it's the first time through for people in that situation. They haven't had my life experience to be like expectations of whatever prom looks like or those things. It's first time through. So it's the obvious, but kind of remembering these things as I'm viewing it. Hi, Ronell, we're just getting started, I suppose, now. Once I confirm that we're at quorum.
We are at quorum. We have 4, so we're right there.
Okay, great. And also we'll welcome folks as they continue to join. Yeah. So given the small space that we have, or the small number of participants, I think we can be a little bit more liberal with. Hi, Stephanie. Just getting, audio's connecting. Hi, Stephanie, we're just getting started now. And I was saying, as we have the small number of participants, probably just take, let's say, 30 seconds or so to go around. Sometimes I'm hesitant when we have 100 people on the call saying, no, we'll never get to anything. But just kind of a quick status check. I gave mine on how well this time has been with my little baby. So I took a little airspace there. But I'll just reintroduce myself as Jeff Landau with Racial Justice Coalition Steering Committee member, and we're here for the Community Engagement and Funding Subcommittee of the Racial Justice Oversight Body, of course, for one of our monthly subcommittee meetings. And let me invite Chris to give a quick intro and update.
Good afternoon, everyone. Chris James, W. Haywood Burns Institute. Happy to be back with you all. I'd like to ask, the parents how parenthood is going, because I do not intend to have children at all. I am good on that front. You guys are the few, the proud. I appreciate you, and will do everything that I can to make sure that your children are treated fairly, or that I can mentor them or whatever. But I will leave the actual child rearing to all of you, and none for myself. So that's why I like to ask those questions.
Well, appreciate the respect and the check-in on baby. And I guess I'd say never, but that's sounding like a parent, right? So I'm just going to stop talking now and say, Nicole, would you give a quick intro and your check-in?
Nicole from Office of Reentry and Justice. Been here since middle of January, so relatively new to the county, and staff to this committee.
Thanks, Nicole. I'm gonna, rather than do the popcorn thing, I'm just gonna delegate or call on folks. Hopefully that's not too awkward. Ronell, can I invite you to just give an intro and check in?
Yeah, Ronell Ellis, just checking in. I'm working from home and got some work being done, so that's why I was trying to be muted, but I'm here. And yeah, sorry, Christopher, but all mine are grown. I got 4, but I would have loved to have shared them with you. Took a couple off my hands a long time ago. It's a little too late now, so sorry. Good afternoon, everybody.
Thanks, Renell. Got me laughing over here. Can I invite Melvin to do an intro check-in?
Good afternoon, Melvin Russell with the probation department. And, the same things are going. One thing that, my grandfather passed away on Saturday. And so, he was 93, lived a wonderful, great life. And so we were happy that, he was able to see the grandkids, great grandkids, and great great grandkids. So the lineage all the way down. And so, yeah, that's what's been going on in our household the last couple of days.
Thanks, Melvin. I'm sorry for your loss and your family. Even when it is a long and beautiful life, it's not easy to ever lose a loved one. But sounds like there's some really wonderful perspective that you already have at this time and some good memories. Yeah, so Stephanie, let me invite you to intro and check in.
Hey everybody, Stephanie, Rise Center committee member. I don't know exactly what the prompt was, but it sounded like it was something with kids. I have none, and I'm happy. So, yeah, check.
Awesome. Let me then invite Marcus to do an intro and check in.
Good afternoon, everyone. Marcus Walton with the Contra Costa County Office of Education, representing Superintendent of Schools Lynn Mackey. Glad to be here. I missed the March meeting, but my kids are my kids. I have 3 of them, so I feel your pain, but I'm excited to say that I am fully vaccinated. I hope everyone is, and looking forward to a less restrictive summer. Not fully free and open, but less restrictive. So hope everyone's blessed.
Right on. That's very good news about full vaccination, and I'm sharing the positive vibe about what the future can bring. Let's see. Emilio, can I invite you to do an intro and check-in?
Yeah, hi everyone. I'm happy to be here. I'm a community member. I'm also an educator, so I'm here in my classroom right now getting set up for my 21 kiddos that are coming back. And I have one beautiful 20-year-old of my own.
Welcome again. Glad you're with us. Jill, I knew that you were in a place you can't talk at the moment, so we're glad you're with us too. And, as you wish at any point to just chime in, but I understand that at the moment it's not possible. Jane, can I invite you to do introduction, just quick check-in?
Oh, yeah, sure. Let's see, I can, I'm folding laundry at the moment here in my lovely garage. What was the check-in question?
Just introducing ourselves, how we came to the meeting, and if there's any.
Oh, sure.
Yeah.
I'm here as a member of the Contra Costa Racial Justice Coalition, Surge Contra Costa. I'm a resident of Richmond, a member of Richmond Progressive Alliance, and I really am sorry I haven't been able to attend enough meetings of this oversight body as well as the subcommittees, and I understand community engagement. I figured that sounds like something I'm interested in, so I haven't had a chance to go over the agenda too closely, but I'm always interested in hearing what you guys do. So, and I'm vaccinated, yay, have been for a while, so that feels great. Thank you.
Thank you, Jane. I'm glad you're here, and right, I always feel like I want to be in more places than I can be at any particular time. I know you're in a lot of places, and it's great that you're here now. Lynette, let me invite you to just quick intro and check in.
Everyone, Lynette Williams, Stand Together Contra Costa via the Public Defender's Office here in Contra Costa. And I feel like I'm in a special group right now because for the longest I've been the only African-American woman my age or even younger for that matter, with no kids. So I'm just shocked to see my brothers and sisters here. I thought I was the only one happy helping with the nieces and nephews, you know? So good to be here and half vaccinated. I'm waiting to get my second shot.
On the way to the full vaccination. That's wonderful. And right, I'm feeling like maybe we should get a poll going on or something, but it's cool to have a contingent and a range of perspectives. And I think the theme is that happiness can come in however we choose to get there. And so, yeah, that's good that we have a cadre, because, you know, sometimes these spaces would be like, no, have a child. And so, right, we're respecting everyone's choices and where they are at this time in life. So that's wonderful. Yeah, let's see. Let's move on then to our agenda. And I know I'll just take a moment of accountability in that I had said at the last meeting that I would have direct contact, or tried to, with Apollo to see about his doing a quick intro for, let's give an overview to folks. I didn't do that. And that's the sort of like follow-up that's really needed to make persons comfortable and reminding that, yeah, oh yeah, we talked about doing that and I'm going to. So if she was on the other foot, I would say that I don't remember that was the thing. So I'm going to do the intro this time, and I'm going to write a note also to just say that that's a reminder to me to follow up for that next time. See that note, Jane? Wonderful, lovely. Family note there in the chat. So yeah, let me do a share screen, which I'm going to try to just walk through some docs as I do this general orientation. We have folks here that everyone on this call has some significant background, but it never hurts to take a couple minutes, I think, to run through this stuff. So here I am. And I think then you should be able to see what we have as our agenda. Yeah, great. And then as I'm just going through that, you can see we're starting off with this quick intro. I imagine this will take maybe 3 minutes or so. Public comment, anything you choose that's not on the agenda. And even if it is on the agenda and you can't stay for something and you want to talk about it now, that's just fine. And there'll be opportunities to have comment at each of these stages on the items that we have on the agenda. Look at the notes from last time and approve those if they're right, and make any changes if necessary. Talking about having a standing agenda item for Juvenile Justice Coordinating Council members within our community engagement and funding subcommittee of this group. So basically, we always need to check in, it seems. There's a lot of overlap. I'm just kind of giving a quick check-in as to what this would be in content. And that if that's the case, maybe it's best that we have a standing check-in rather than remembering to, oh yeah, we need to do that. It just becomes kind of a default thing. And then if there's nothing material to add, then we won't do it. But let's get to more content on that later. Talk about community capacity fund update and communications on that. Where do we stand and what is that looking like? Draft community capacity fund guidelines. Say quick appreciation to Chris for drafting this updated edit that we can go through together. Scheduling following up meeting with local youth advisory council. That's a long-term project that we've been working on. And then just confirm that we have our next meeting in May and wrap up. So that's the plan for our agenda today. Just as I'm going through that, is there anything that folks have looking at the agenda to check in about or want to add, maybe modify? Let's see if I can. All right, not immediately seeing anything. So I'm going to just quickly try to, yeah, now I have a little bit more, run through, and maybe this is just kind of another practice run of what if we have new folks that haven't really had any exposure to the group, and can have a little feedback here of like, you know, this was working or wasn't working in terms of how this would be a quick orientation to our context. So if you go to our county's webpage, and I have that here, then you can see basically a quick history of how we got to where we are from the task force. Highlight some docs here that are going to give you a lot of good content as a overview of what's happened. And that will give you here oversight body docs. Where do I want to be? Right, the task force recommendations. So that's kind of a, if I went back to here, giving you the bigger kind of overview timeline, saying the task force came before, and they had these summary recommendations. What were those? Here they are. And this is 4 pages, gives you a really good snapshot. It's not everything for sure, but that's kind of an overview of what were the consensus points that were supposed to be done. And these were, I'll just give you the head titles, and then you got to look at all the bullet points there: oversight and accountability, diversion, data, county support for local agencies, community engagement and services, practices related to trial and adjudication processes, confinement, and other. Okay, so I can put, and I will put the links to each of these pages in their chat. So you can kind of just have maybe some of these cheat sheet things if it seems that way to you. All right, and then also, if I'm looking at this first page, orientation overview page, you can see discussion of these work plans, right? Community engagement and funding subcommittee draft work plan, which we've been working on. And that's kind of saying what is, if we translate or move in time from rather, the draft recommendations or the summary recommendations from the task force, and we get to our oversight body. This draft work plan is what we've hammered out over time to define the work that we do here in this subcommittee, which we'll then bring to the oversight body. And where is that? Right, this is the link that is also coming. All of these I'm getting from the document center from the Contra Costa County website. So that's also a nice thing I've always found as a community advocate rather than individual kind of attorney level, to have things that are coming from the source. This is coming from Contra Costa, right? It's not what I'm saying the draft work plan is or what these other docs are. They're coming from that more neutral party. So, right, this hammers out what we have said that we want to do. And these are all advocacy tools for the person who comes into the meeting, right? Is saying, well, I think you guys should be doing this. Sometimes just as the further background of that is you said that you were going to be doing these things, and then this is included in your work plan. Not that it has to be that way, because sometimes the contribution can also be, well, you don't have this in your work plan and you should, right? But in another way, it's already, if it's already there and they've committed to doing it, then that can make it even a stronger push to have that happen. Chris led, I think, the creation of this update report, which was provided to Public Protection Committee last year, right? I think that we've had a subsequent update, but this one, I think, is the June 2020, I want to say. I'm like scrolling down to say, there's some note that was saying. At the next, so right, this is another doc, which I'll include, and it just kind of gives a little bit of background of, well, what's happened at this level now, right? Because we went from task force to recommendations to draft work plan, and then what kind of progress has actually happened on that work plan. This gives us a little bit more detail, a good bit of more detail. And then maybe final thing I was going to say, see in the chat, have that, is this chart, which I had included at previous meetings and am just, let me, so you can see a little bit better. Yeah. How did you guys even get here, right? Well, who created this thing and who's in charge of it and Who do you report to? What's the pathway of power to get some decisions ultimately made here? So this is the overview that comes from the most recent, it's updated from last time. Current recommended budget for 2021, 2022. And this has over, the citizens are the ultimate decision makers, then we'll vote on the supervisors, who in turn will have the county administrator position. I know that Jill was reminding me on this. It is appointed, right? By the Board of Supes. I think that's right. And then we have these groups that can be created through the power of the Board of Supervisors. We fall within that. And you can see within here, there are these elected officials, but what's the group I'm looking for to just say these advisory bodies? Well, this is an area where it's like, okay, Jeff, practice this part when we do it next time, to find our specific little zone. But we are falling within the creation of the Board of Supervisors. And I'd say usually the pathway that this happens in terms of the issues that we talk about when we have our recommendations, meaning from the Racial Justice Oversight Body, ordinarily, before it just goes to the full Board of Supervisors, it will go to the Public Protection Subcommittee of the Board of Supervisors, which is kind of the relevant subgroup of the Board of Supervisors that deal with issues like these that have to do with community safety, justice systems, a number of other things too, but a lot of things that overlap here, and in turn will then send it to the full Board of Supes. I think I said this would take, I don't know, 3 minutes, and it's been 10. Also note for me to have, and I am planning now to just put these links in the chat and move to our next agenda item. Unless I'll invite also, if there's other questions as I'm doing that, or other points, maybe there's relevant history that I could add. So anyone's welcome to just unmute and speak if they would like.
Really appreciate the orientation, Jeff. Thank you very much. I've been floundering on the website and found some of those documents, but certainly not all of them. So thank you.
You're welcome. Okay, can I ask this group as just an open question as I'm going through? We had in our list of recommendations from the Racial Justice Task Force that we go back to the old system of jury sourcing, and that there should be a regionalized system as it had been way back before the change, which came in 2012, because when we did that change to make it this countywide thing, it reduced representation, specifically of persons of color in our juries. So it was an official recommendation, and I've been trying to find, did we change? Did the county change back to this? I can't seem to find the answer immediately. It's the sort of thing that should be on the website, or at least there was probably some check-in on the Public Protection Committee. My guess is it hasn't changed unless I have some sort of note that says specifically it has. But I don't expect anyone on the call to be necessarily knowing the answer, but putting it out there, I'm going to keep doing my little research to say what happened with that. It's something that they're dealing with, I would say, what appears to be an analogous issue in Alameda County, although I'm a little bit out of my depth there, in that I'm not as on top of in connection with the justice system discussions there. Just adding these final links to our chat. And last, well, this one is a screenshot from the bigger doc. You see, well, this is coming from my PDF. Okay, you can find it in the bigger county doc. I was saying everything comes from the county source, but this one actually was a print of one page of a 700-page document. So there
Jeff,
you
do you
have it.
know who administered this page? Is that something that ORJ was doing at one point?
The county webpage. I
Or our
don't.
job?
I don't know if that falls within do it.
You mean who was keeping it up to date, like sending
Yeah,
in?
but
It
I'm
may have,
just wondering, I mean, we are currently posting the agendas, but if there was, I guess, a want or a desire to provide updates on it and what those updates would look like. At one point, it looks like it was pretty frequent.
yeah,
I
and
don't
you
know,
know,
Laura.
I'm not sure. It may have been something that Dante took on when he was here.
I
I'm
mean, I
assuming.
can edit it because I have access to, but I was just wondering, I guess more if there's a desire to continue to.
I mean, I think that we should keep it as up to date as possible. Especially if we direct community members to the page, and it sounds like we at least have one person on the call that was reviewing the page, so that probably would be helpful.
Yeah, let's find out the history though, of who was doing it before ORJ volunteers to
Yeah.
do it. So, and I know Patrice is coming on. She should be starting the first Monday in May. So maybe that's something that you just make a note she could reach out to Dante and try to get some history of it.
Sounds good.
And thank you for that note in the chat also, Jill, about ORJ likely having been previously. And I think that sounds like a good suggestion to me also, Melvin, what you were proposing. I am going to add now into the chat. This is, you can find in that page, the 700-page current proposed recommended budget from which that one-pager chart comes. So for what that's worth, that's really more just kind of a conceptual overview. But let me then move us to our agenda, our next item, and I'm wanting to have now in front of me, so clearly have a few windows going on here, but I'm back with you. And I did want to say before I transition to the next item that I recognize since our last meeting that there was in our state recognition of Cesar Chavez Day, and I know in other parts of the world too, and recognizing the Latinx members of our community, and also some of the significant disparities that are reflected in the foundational docs that you'll see in the recommendations and the charts that came in the work that led here. In particular, my mind is going to underrepresentation of Latinx members of our community in juries, but there were other areas as well where there were disparate, inequitable, current status quo at several different points of our county's processes. So I just want to say that moment of recognition of those members of our community, a significant portion of our community falls within, I think, what could be self-identified persons as Latinx, and that's part of the work of this group too, I think. While I'll also say, I think, rightfully in its context, the primary work, I think, of this group is to address the harms of our systems on African-American members of our community. At the same time, the work is broad in terms of what racial justice is and should be. So taking that moment to recognize through Cesar Chavez Day, which is just a moment to do that, I think. And also in the same spirit that there have been significant harms to members of our Asian American and Pacific Islander members of our community here locally, Bay Area, and different parts of the country. So that it's important also, I think, to recognize when we're speaking about community that inclusivity and recognition of what's happening. So even to just say we see that and it's wrong is important, even if it's not yet on this agenda, and more than that. But I did want to take one moment to express that. And now would invite public comment from anyone as we're moving to number 2, the item on our agenda, following our announcements and intros. And I think public comments can include announcements if you have them.
I do have a quick announcement. And possibly if we can maybe put it on the agenda for next month, and then this is also open to individuals. But the office, many of you know that the county is in the process of coordinating an office of racial equity and social justice. Currently, they are doing listening sessions, and these listening sessions are being held by organizations, but there are also individual community members that are holding listening sessions. So there was an ask of this body if it would be possible if we would like to hold a listening session. And then also if there's anyone that would like, that's an individual that would like to hold a one-on-one with people or a larger listening session, let me know. There's a whole guide to walk you through the process, so you don't have to come up with any of the material on your own. But if you are interested, I'll put my email in the chat, and please email me if you have any interest.
Thanks, Stephanie. That sounds really interesting is too mild. I'm looking for the right word, but I'm intrigued by, I guess I'd say, can you say just a little bit more about what like a one-on-one would look like?
I mean, it could look like however you would like.
Right.
It could be you holding a one-on-one with your neighbor that lives in the county to talk about what a racial equity looks like in the county, or what it could look like, to talk about experiences that you've had within the county. Oh, one thing that I did forget, I believe there are gift cards. I'm not sure what type of gift cards are available, but that is an incentive. But like I said, there's a whole guide to help just guide you through the whole process with questions. And then even through some of those questions, there may be some other things that organically arise. So it leaves it open for that as well.
Yeah.
But it could be like a coffee together. Socially distanced, of course.
Yeah, that helps at least me to give like some more context and understanding of it. That sounds great. Those dialogues. Yeah.
Yes, Lynette, there is.
Awesome.
And I don't know when the next meeting is, but I'll let this group know. Even at the meetings, there is language access. We also have folks that are doing ASL. So we're trying to keep this as accessible as possible.
Right on. Yeah.
Stephanie,
Chris. Oh yeah,
sorry.
or Melvin, please.
I was gonna say, do you know, is the long-term goal of the new seat that the county is putting together, is that then our job will be moved from ORJ into the new county to look at all of the racial equity, or is it going to be separate where we're still tasked and then the county is going to be tasked, or has there been any conversation?
Yeah, I mean, with our job specifically, it has a criminal justice focus. This is a lot broader with the ORESJ. So I think that there's places where there needs to be collaboration. I don't know what will happen in the future, but as far as I know, they're going to stay separate for at least right now, unless something else happens. But I think with this office, it's really looking at the broader county systems and all the systems within the county. So not just the criminal system.
Thank you, Stephanie. Okay, so I'm interested. I want to do a listening session, at least one of them. I'll email you. And that was the follow-up. Chris, you unmuted for a moment.
Yeah, about the listening session, because I just wanted to be clear, like if the subcommittee is being asked potentially to have a listening session for this purpose, or to host one, or just making sure I'm clear on that.
Yeah, that is one of the asks. I don't know if we need to put that on for a vote for the next meeting, but yes.
Okay.
Good clarification, and I'm into it. Marcus?
Stephanie, what kind of timeline are we looking at here? How long are the listening sessions going? Is there a time by which they want them wrapped up so they can take that information and utilize it for? Also, what are the goals? What are the goals of the listening sessions?
So these initial listening sessions, they're happening over April and May, but there's possibly going to be some more. I mean, some of the goals, they're trying to find out what have been people's experiences within the county. And then some of the listening sessions eventually will focus on how they would like this office to look. So it's really focusing on this being participatory and getting as much community input as possible, not just the Board of Supervisors deciding what this looks like. So it's going to take some time, but these initial sessions, April, May, there's possibly going to be some more following those, but getting people's experiences, eventually getting them to dream about what this office could look like, who's needed for this office. Those are some of the things, some of the goals.
Thank you again. Yeah, that was helpful for me too. That was a good follow-up questions, Marcus, on that. At least helped me think next steps. So our next meeting is May 13th. Maybe we do need to have a vote in order to actually host, but also we can prime this and saying we know that it'll be something we want to have on agenda, and perhaps there can be just some foundational discussion now, so that when we address it on May 13th, we can have the background to say, well, we talked about this, and here was our initial impressions. I like the idea. I also feel like there's a lot of potential overlap in specifically the Youth Advisory Council concepts. And some of the questions that are there, if we do have input from youth, members of community on issues such as what does racial equity look like, that I don't know what the questions will be or what the responses will be, but I think there's probably a good bit of overlap there. What are other people's thoughts on us specifically hosting a listening session, our subcommittee hosting one, knowing that we'll vote on this later, but just getting some input from others on that idea?
I like it. I think being boisterous and visible, I think matters, and I think it's relevant based on a lot of work that's being done is behind the scenes, and the community or folks need to know that we're there, and it may generate, may educate the community a little more about what's being done what's in the works for these types of issues. And so most people don't even know that something like this is happening. And so it would be our job, I believe, to inform them.
Thanks, Vernell. Others input on this, and maybe I'll just also encourage or invite, if people feel most comfortable giving their contributions over chat, I think that's okay here. At least I'm kind of remembering that we talked about that for youth contributions in different spaces and at people's comfort level. I think it's true for all ages to a certain extent, that people may feel more comfortable writing the note than unmuting at the particular time. So if there's, I'll say on this item, and then things that move forward too, if you want to contribute that way, I think that's okay also. And also I see that we have a new member joining our meeting, Noe. Just would invite you, as I have for everybody who was here at the very start, if you'd like to introduce yourself briefly and check in. The question was just, how are you doing right now? So I invite you, if you're available, to do that.
Hey everybody, this is Noe Godino. I'm doing pretty well today. Actually just got off another meeting about Senate Bill 300, trying to drop that special circumstance felony murder charge. And so that meeting went kind of well with one of the staffers that we was just talking to. So I'm doing pretty well today. And the sun is out, the wind is blowing. I hope everybody else is having a blessed day as well.
Thanks, Noe. Glad you're here with us. And I appreciate you bringing that that reference to a bill. And I think we could probably follow up and educate ourselves on that issue if we choose to. So thank you. And invite you, as I think I was saying at the just earlier on, we had public comment period, and also trying to avoid unnecessary formalities. So if there's something that you or others want to contribute in terms of public comment, that's an open kind of standing thing, so long as it's not, repeating what comes later or another comment. So I guess that's a way of saying, no, if you want to take time to make a public comment, you're welcome to, beyond just the intro that we did, and doesn't need to be on the spot either. You can check in on that as we hit other items on the agenda.
Nah, thank you for the invitation, but I came in pretty late, so I'd rather just have things roll.
Great, thank you. So others' thoughts specifically on the concept of our hosting a listening session, this subcommittee doing that sometime maybe in May, like what would be after our May 13th session, but just the concept of that.
I'll weigh in now in my car. So I think there's a lot of confusion around these various offices. So I think it'd be a very good thing for this group to host such a session. Because I know in talking to a couple of people who are new to the county that there is confusion about what these different bodies do. And, the fact that this office is envisioned as having a broader kind of mandate than the racial justice oversight body, which is kind of more justice oriented, and which came about because of all of these disparities in our system here. I think that it would be wise for your community engagement subcommittee to be the host, to really orient people in a way that you were kind of orienting some of the new members today to these various bodies, because you know, it's really hard to understand how to plug in. And as you well know, so for that reason, I would say, yes, I would endorse you doing that.
Thank you,
Thanks.
Jane.
Sure.
And thank you also, Emilio, right? That's a contribution over chat that you just have given, and it further informs our discussion. So appreciate that. And Jane, to what you're saying, I think, right, there have to be others in addition to Emilio on the call who have a feeling that, yeah, this could be some clarification. And I'll just note that my tally so far is positive sentiment on the idea. We haven't had a definitive vote, and we'll do that next time on the concept of hosting a listening session, but it sounds like everyone's into it so far. So any other public comment really on any item before we move to approval of record of actions? Okay. As I was saying before, you're welcome to check in as things come up. I want to say one last thing because it was on my notes and I don't know where else it fits. So before we move to approval record of actions, there was a presentation that was made to the general membership meeting of the Contra Costa County Racial Justice Coalition. And I'm sitting here as a steering committee member of that group. And at our last general membership meeting, which was last week, last Wednesday, we had a presentation from Ton Hall and Gigi Crowder. Gigi's been at meetings here before, and they're both with the Miles Hall Foundation. Miles Hall is a young man in our community, African-American male, who is killed in interaction with law enforcement. Also had mental health diagnosis, and context, Jane saying right in the chat there, I agree that it was powerful and informative. So suffice it to say that a young man was killed and family was calling for help, and it's not so much about pointing fingers as recognizing that that is real trauma for everyone who's involved in that situation, and that as I was describing to a friend of mine who's out of state, doesn't know anything about the work that I'm doing, and just said, like, what's going on? And I said, I went to this powerful presentation, and right, can you imagine standing between a mother and whatever her goal is after something like that, right? She's just going to do whatever is necessary to make sure that there's a change and that this doesn't happen in the same way. So that was a very powerful presentation. And there's a plan that they have, campaign to have a crisis response unit designated as the Miles Hall Crisis Response Unit. And there's more on that. And I'm not having this on the agenda to have a kind of a full discussion of all the content that's there. And I know that there's a good bit of complexity in terms of the services that are currently offered and the ways in which they are and meeting needs and all of that. But I did want to just recognize that this is a campaign that's happening and invite persons to look into it further. I know that if you're to look online for Miles Hall Foundation and try to be in contact with either Ton Hall and or Gigi, they would be happy to be speaking with you. And as Jill's saying on the chat there, that yes, there is a statewide bill that has been authored, and it's titled as the Miles Hall Act, to have a or Miles Hall Initiative, whatever that bill is, and it will be, as Jill's saying, a separate phone line for crisis instead of 911 988, and it would be able to respond to calls that are specifically mental health in nature, and also apparently a rerouting feature for calls that are sent to 911 initially, and there's a way to have screening and sent to a more fitting based on the person who's receiving. So basically, a bigger campaign in the statewide arena, and then also what would it look like in Contra Costa if that were to happen, right? There's one thing to have the phone line, but then how does the response happen specifically? And how does it happen in a way that is responding to what happened to Miles and to other people in our community and statewide? And yes, thank you, Jane, for giving again, but more context in the chat on this point. So maybe we'll be hearing more, and I'm interested in it in a future meeting if we have capacity. There's a lot of different things that are on our agenda, and I think we have to be mindful of the things that we've already prioritized in our work plan. And I also see how this is our coalition had this presentation from Miles Hall Foundation because we feel like it's something that we recognize as building and community support, and right, this is community engagement, so it's always kind of a responsive mechanism. And enough said for me on that. So I will turn us to approving the record of actions from our agenda, if I can pivot there. And you're seeing on page 3 and 4 of that 5-page packet are the notes from last time. And for what it's worth, I like that this is short and sweet on the written component, and it's supplemented by the video component. So I will also note that if you go back to some of the links that I had in the chat, and specifically when you're looking at the Racial Justice Oversight Body Agenda Center, or it's the Public Meetings Agenda Center, it's in that list of links that I had given. And in there, you'll see, if you look at the link from last time, there's a little video icon. Let me just show you real quickly. I'm going to share screen, so rather than me talking about it, you can see what I'm talking about. Okay. Yeah. Can I notate? No, I don't need to get fancy with that. But I will say that you can see for the March 11th, this little icon here. If I click on that, it should be able to give us content from meeting last time. Wow, it's very meta there. I'm going to stop doing. And so further content is there. Going back to what was on
I'm
our.
going to post the YouTube channel because there's actually a YouTube channel for this body that all the videos are posted on. And I'll share that link. We also
Thank you,
posted
Nicole.
on the location that you were suggesting, but just a little bit more content, I guess you could say, provided on YouTube. And
No, that's great. Thank you, Nicole. If I were a community advocate in this meeting, I would be like, gold mine, boom, right there, that link. It's going to give me the things I need to get in order to move forward. So great.
yeah, because it goes there first before we can post it on the county.
Yeah. What did we say before, and what are our commitments that we made and all that stuff? That stuff is certainly, as community advocate, is major. This was already, you guys voted on this previously. You already said you were doing that. And for us on our level, but I feel like as the accountability other party that comes in and says, you already had these discussions or whatever it may be, is important. So that said, it's supplemented. We have the written form. Any amendments, corrections to be made? And not seeing anything in the moment. I will invite, let's see, oh, is there any public comment on these notes? Hearing nothing for this moment, I will invite if there's a motion to approve these notes or the record of actions from last time.
Motion to approve. Stephanie.
Thank you. Is there a second? I see Renell. That counts, I think. I see Renell for a second, and then can we call the vote? Or unless there's any further discussion, ready to call the vote? Ready.
All right. And just for those that weren't there, you don't have to be there to vote yes or no to the vote. You can still vote yes, even though you weren't there. So, Jeff,
Yes.
Melvin,
Yes.
Marcus,
Yes.
Stephanie,
Yes.
Renell,
Yes.
Noe.
Yes.
All right, motion passes. Thank you.
Thank you, Nicole. Let's see, what was I just remembering that our voting is working fine in this way. I'm having just thinking too many thoughts in the moment, so just move ahead to the next, and if it comes back to me, I'll go back on that point. So let's move to our then having, took me a moment. I was remembering in a small group discussion that we had, I think since the time of our meeting in March, I believe it was Jill who was discussing the procedural aspects and kind of some of the Brown Act requirements, but it was coming to me as we were doing our vote that, boy, this feels formal sometimes. The make the motion, the seconds, the blah, 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 all these things. And also that it is important protection. We're in a super civil group where it seems like very often pretty close to consensus, if not a consensus. And that said, these protections do allow for when things get tense, as they sometimes can, because these issues mean a lot to all of us in different ways, our different entry points, that I think it's worth our doing, even though for a group that functions as amicably as we do, it does sometimes seem like this is a little bit cumbersome. Other times it can really be an important thing, and it only really works if you do it all the time. So my little thing on that to say, I know that this can be annoying, but I'm glad that we do make our paces through it. And we've approved.
Quickly.
Yeah, right. We have folks that know how to do it, and appreciating also that Nicole, you do step in to make sure that we're administering as we need to, and when we have a little gap, that we're doing it right. So that brings us to next item on our agenda, which is a standing agenda item for Juvenile Justice Coordinating Council members within the Community Engagement and Funding Subcommittee. Chris, can I call on you to give a quick intro to this concept?
Yeah, so basically there's a lot of overlap with the JJCC and particularly the CEF. I mean, the RJOB generally is probably, just as true, but on these two pressing items that we're working on, right? Trying to establish a community capacity fund and trying to develop a youth advisory council. Those are things that the JJCC also seems to be working on. And so rather than having to call additional meetings or have additional conversations to figure out what's going on in each group and to keep each group coordinated, to the extent that there is overlap in terms of membership on this subcommittee as well as the JJCC, trying to have a space on the agenda for folks, whoever those folks might be. I think I know who one of them might be, but I don't want to put her out there like that right now. You know, to give us an update in terms of what's going on with the JJCC.
Thanks, Chris. Right, that these lines of communication are super essential given the overlap. We have some informed parties. And I see Stephanie is on the call. Okay, Stephanie, what do you think?
I think it's a good idea. I don't have to give the report all the time, but I don't know, Melvin, if you would mind sharing sometimes since you're at those meetings as well. I think, aren't you pretty much at all of them?
Well, see, and I was going to say that's the issue that I have because I'm at so many meetings, it's hard trying to keep everything organized with the issues of the JJCC, the issues of the RJOB, because we're running into that now with the data committee on both of the things. And so, you know, trying to get there when I can. But I don't even know if I attend the community engagement on the JJ. I have to even see what that one is. But I mean, if I'm there and can speak on it, but that might be one. Community engaged. Yeah, I have to see which manager I have that's on that one because there is one that I don't.
Oh, you know what, Kiki.
No, Kiki does the PICE. She does the.
Oh, then that's the same one.
Oh, okay, okay.
Yeah, that's community engagement.
Okay, got it. Yeah, so sometimes I jump on that one when I can, and sometimes I don't. So when I'm able to, you know, I definitely can. I'll just be sure to take notes at the PICE meetings. But I can give you a quick update. The last one we had to cancel because we didn't have quorum. So there's the update on that one. So I'm good for this week. You got next time, Steph.
Nicely done. Veteran move there. Yeah, no, that is great. And I think just to know that we will, right, this speaks to exactly that it's real that we're in these different spaces and feeling like it's a lot to keep straight. Whereas all of this, I mean, I guess I also with my advocacy hat on, which I'm always wearing, I don't know if I need to drop that phrase, is that I see like these are continued opportunities. It's like all of these different spaces. It can be frustrating in the sense that like there should just be one place that's holding this. And also, if one place is holding it, a lot of different people are left out in the discussion because they missed that meeting. So these are different listening sessions on that point, right? It's that oversight body speaks in different ways than Juvenile Justice Coordinating Council. And we have a lot of overlap, but not total overlap. And if we try to just make it one big meeting, I think we'd miss, these are like filtering these conversations. And it matters when we have these between meetings. Thanks, Jane. Try to stay on the positive. That when we have these between meetings, that it's going to be important to be coordinating, and then when Juvenile Justice Coordinating Council is doing its work to say, you know, we did have some discussion on this and oversight body, and they're thinking this too. And it's more persuasive, I think, ultimately to the final decision makers, the Board of Supes, that they're hearing, you know, these different spaces have vetted this thing. I certainly feel that way with the capacity fund, that it has a lot of credibility already if we say, as the oversight body, this is something that needs to happen in a robust way. And also, if the supervisors are hearing, in addition to another group that has a lot of credible stakeholders, the Juvenile Justice Coordinating Council, that they think that it should be, then that's all the more persuasive, all the more powerful. So that said, I will also note on my, it's still positive, but just real hat that can't keep doing the same thing in the different spaces, which is, I think, maybe what this agenda item is about, is trying to avoid unnecessary overlap by having just a standing item to have the communication, because even without, you know, the one-liner update that Melvin gave us, part of it could be like, well, how much happened at that last meeting? We're trying to figure out. We know, but the status was nothing happened at that last meeting, and it's going to be building to the next one. So it's value even there.
Yeah, and I'll definitely talk with the chief, and I know I just texted Kiki because it may even make sense, you know, of her being the rep on this meeting as well, since she is on PICE, and really can then talk to those sort of internal inside discussions of sort of what each group is thinking about, and taking that information back from our group to the PICE as well. So it is that, you know, that free flowing communication or whatnot. And she said her schedule is open. So I'll talk with the chief next week about it, and then see about making her a part of this group as well. If you're good with that, Jeff.
Yeah, no, thank you, Melvin. I'm totally open to that. You know, what makes the best sense in resources and communication, and also say that love having your voice in this space. So if it's an addition thing, that's fabulous. If it needs to be sometimes in place of given needs, understand that that can be also. So yes, that's great. You're having the communication.
Yeah, definitely in addition. So I think the more voices I would continue to attend.
Okay, well then I say unqualified. That's great. I love it. Yeah, that was my only little hesitation, but yeah. So I'm saying definitely more the merrier there. So we said on here on our agenda that this would be for a vote. It's not a big lift necessarily, right? It's just saying let's make sure that we make a point of always having open communication at these meetings, and can be as brief as it needs to be, but that this is the proposal, is that for our meetings moving forward, that we'll have a standing agenda item on this. Chris, I see you unmuted.
Just to clarify, it's not, maybe not completely necessary to have a vote on this. As you know, I like to include that language just so that we're good to go and we don't have to wait until the next meeting to do something. So I tend to include it more often than not, but I don't know that you actually need to vote to put a standing item on the agenda for this.
It's a good point. I do kind of wonder, I mean, to try to avoid tying our hands unnecessarily, well, you guys ran afoul of your rules by not having the standing agenda item. I mean, it's something that we really do want to have, and also I'm not sure that it needs to be like a procedural requirement as much as something we say intentional to. Open to
If
it.
I could,
Jill, you're unmuting.
yeah. If I could just interject, you can have an agenda item and no report. So it doesn't require a vote of the committee to add an agenda item. That could be done, you know, as you're building the agenda. And if there's no report, there's no report, no big deal.
Yeah, thank you, Jill. I'm comfortable just having this be something that we're committed to doing based on our discussion without a vote, especially with that context. Everyone else feel all right with that too? Seeing the visual confirmation. And anything more that anyone wants to say on this point before we transition to our next item on agenda? Okay, public comment at each of these stages. So that said, we'll move ahead to our next item, which is, I guess, what would be perhaps more of what it looks like if it were to be an agenda item in the future, right? So we're saying, let's discuss the capacity fund update. It's one of the things here that there's a good bit of overlap. We know based on what Melvin was just telling us that there wasn't at the last, what would have been meeting of the JJCC discussion on this point specifically because of the quorum thing, but we did have a smaller discussion with Chris. You and I were on a call with Chief Emmon Krause and RDA representatives, two persons from RDA, which is facilitating some work with the Juvenile Justice Coordinating Council. And basically the idea of, are we coordinating as we, I know that's coordinating council overlap language there, but are we talking the way that we need to about this? Because there's a good bit of overlap in how the capacity fund, are we doing this the same way? And what what are the discussions looking like? I and Chris participated, and in that meeting talked about some of the most recent discussions we had here about with talking about this two-stage thing. There would be a cohort, there would be the first session that has, or first phase that has larger number of recipients, smaller amount of investment for that first phase, and then based on the first phase, we'd have the second phase and smaller number of people, but more investment in each org or group that's included in the second phase. So we talked about that, and heard some back from RDA in terms of where the capacity fund direction has been most recently discussion there. And my kind of summary on that had been that it would be the scope of what's currently discussed with RDA is something consistent with, and perhaps a little bit more limited in scope, in that it would be with the intention of addressing training technical assistance and how you can apply for grants, and how you can navigate that process and get the information and submit an appropriate application, which we were having the back and forth in conversation to say, yeah, but does that mean that that wouldn't be addressing the sort of resources needed by the organization to have a stellar application? Like, part of it is technical assistance, like, how do I do this well? And then part of this is like, well, I need the resources to provide the sorts of services that I am currently doing. It's not sustainable to do it this way, or we need to build in the, and I think my shorthand of that discussion would be that RDA folks were saying, well, that wasn't quite the scope of what we had in mind. And we are interested in the idea of doing something bigger, but I'm not sure that that's currently what is on our radar as to just discussions. So Chris, let me invite you to give your memory of what this is. And you were there too.
Yeah, I think you covered it well. I don't really have anything to add to that. I think that's a pretty good summation of what the conversation was. But that's definitely something we wanted to bring to you all, to let you all know sort of what that coordination was kind of looking like so far, and why it's important to have that open line of communication between this group. And that wasn't necessarily the JJCC, it was RDA sort of on behalf of the JJCC. So it's a bit of a different standpoint, but again, I think you summed it up well.
Thanks, Chris. People's thoughts on what I was given that update. For example, that sounds great, or I have some concerns about, or questions, anything? Sometimes the phrasing of the question's too vague too. It's like, what exactly are you asking for input on? So I guess, let me say that there's a little bit more context, that after we had this back and forth discussion of like, okay, it seems like you guys are talking about something a little bit narrower in scope than what we had in mind. And that said, so I think the response sort of when I said that to RDA reps was, well, does it feel comfortable that we move ahead with this? Like, you know, is this coming in place of? And my sense was that, well, right, that technical assistance is needed, and I think it's good. And it's important also to report back from this meeting that, like, my feedback is our group is saying that that's a portion of it, that's not enough, right? So that it's good, and that it couldn't be a takeaway from the meeting with us that, well, yeah, that hits everything we were talking about, right? Like, you can say it's good to have services offered, and we are expecting that something that is a truly robust, complete community capacity fund is going to be taking on more than that. So don't want to avoid progress happening, right? Like, if service is going to be offered and they're good, then great. We just want to make sure that it's not framed as, and now community capacity fund is done, which is like, no, it was definitely going to be broader than that. So, given that I gave a little bit more context on it, thanks, Chris. Thoughts on what, kind of summarizing it that way?
And Jeff, I think I'm a little confused on exactly what you're asking us. Are you asking, should we continue to go ahead with the community capacity fund? Yeah, I'm a little confused.
Oh, sure. I guess what I'm imagining would be feedback that, I don't think it is cool that RDA runs forward on this thing with their technical assistance project, because that's really probably going to undermine our bigger efforts. Or, it seems to me cool that they run forward with it, so long as we understand clearly with all the different parties that this is just step one of a bigger, or one piece of a bigger project. So that kind of take of, what's the gut check on this? Because I think not that we have the power to decide, but we're working together in it to a certain extent. And I think the feedback is ultimately going to probably come to the Juvenile Justice Coordinating Council. So how does it sound? You guys talk together, and is it fair to say from our CEF committee, yeah, we like running with maybe that project first, or that's something that we're not opposed to happening, so long as we have still our bigger vision in mind? And
yeah, I guess too, because with this committee, this present committee, we're looking at both youth and adult serving agencies. And so I guess that's why I kind of think of it a little bit differently. And I think it's different than how we've been looking at it on the JJCC side, which is very specific, very, very, yeah, it's just a little bit different. So I don't know if they would necessarily conflict with each other.
that's helpful feedback. I mean, right. I think that's another point that's saying these don't necessarily need to be one or the other. They should be both of them. And right. So if I'm hearing what you're saying is that they can both exist.
Yeah. And we haven't actually really necessarily talked about building capacity of youth serving agencies, how we've talked about in general building the capacity of agencies in this group. I think at the JJCC level, we've specifically talked about more of how are we building up the monetary resources, as opposed to what we've talked about with the capacity fund. There's monetary resources, but there's also education component, infrastructure component that we've talked about. So I don't think one cancels out the other.
Yeah. Thank you, Stephanie. That's helpful feedback. I'll throw in this one other nugget from the conversation that I'm remembering is we had a quick kind of check in on, well, where are you guys imagining that the money for this might come from, this sort of project, which is really sort of spitballing ideas because we hadn't had a vote on this. My off the cuff was saying, I think kind of my sense was also perhaps Issa had said specifically, but Chief Emmett Cross had said that AB 109 dollars are getting split up a bunch of different ways, and there's only so much that's there. Like maybe this could be, and I'm thinking, yeah, I like the idea that general fund project, especially if this is something that, again, two different spaces. If the coordinating council is saying yes, this needs an investment, and our oversight body is saying it needs robust investment, then perhaps that's a way that we could propose that this be supported. Good question from Nicole. Are we ending at 4:30?
I just wanted to get clarification.
Right, that's what we said on the agenda, the published agenda, and a very good question to ask because we have 7 minutes left, and I think I was just mentally in the framework of 5 o'clock, but good question. Given that it was published, I will assume 4:30 and right, honoring everyone's time commitments. That's fair. If people have a different memory of, no, I thought we were doing 5. But I'm saying now 4:30 is what it seemed like it was published. Jill, you unmuted.
Oh, sorry, not intentionally.
Oh, okay, no problem. So I'm going to suggest, based on what we've already done, that we will end in just 6 minutes or so, which gives us limited time, but we've made some progress, I think. There's my positive energy again. So staying on the 4:30 track as we had planned, any points or further thoughts from anyone on this agenda item that we're on of the capacity fund back and forth conversations? I think I'll just remember what Stephanie was telling us. It doesn't have to be that this are different, and really it seems like their discussions have been that they are kind of parallel efforts, that the idea of technical assistance was not supposed to be in place of. So that's my shorthand summary of what we're talking about. Any other thoughts, contributions on this point? Let me move then with our time. Saying that the page 5 of our agenda packet, which is the final page of the agenda packet, and I'm just looking at the chat, Measure X, COVID dollars. Jane, I'll invite you as I'm just navigating to this next page, if you'd like to say a word on Measure X and public comment moment if you wish, or anyone else on that point.
Well, I was just wondering if, this could be completely off base, but with the question of where funding would come from, is there, at this stage, I know the budget hearings and talks is coming up. Is it possible that this body or the other bodies you've discussed will get additional funds as a result of both of these infusions of some extra cash?
Yeah, right. Relevant to our discussions now, saying, well, where would the funds for this come from? And Jane's bringing up that there are some very relevant upcoming conversations, current conversations, that I think the budget presentation to the Board of Supervisors is happening on April 20th, if I recall correctly, and there will be presentations by the Justice Department, well, not departments, it's the different justice agencies. So sheriff, district attorney, public defender, some of the bigger ticket items will have heads of departments talking about how the budget would be used, but also perhaps there can be a space for discussion on this. It's always complicated in the sense of, are we ready at this point to be talking about in that space of funding for this project? I'm not, my inclination is that this is too, in its infancy, right, borrowing from our earlier conversations of parenting and childhood. So just infancy, using that word. But so that said, I think we should all be attending to the extent we can, the budget conversations that are happening, presentations at the Board of Supervisors, and also perhaps it's not fully ripe for us to be proposing allocation of funds for the capacity fund at that space. So let's be there and advocate for investment in the sorts of services that we've talked about and already committed to in our oversight body, and also our work plan here. I'll just have this on the page as we've got 2 minutes left to say the draft language that Chris has incorporated our discussions in this draft, and we won't be able to go through it meaningfully at the level that we need to, I think, to truly address everything now. But also, it's in our agenda packet, and I think the plan will be for our next meeting. Thank you, Renell. I'm just seeing the note in the chat about request for proposals is active on BidSync. I only know so much about it, but I'm imagining that this is basically there's a funding opportunity for services, and those who are interested in know on the call can try to access that way. That's some knowledge sharing from Renell on an opportunity. And I also see from Stephanie, like the language, don't have any edits. Awesome. To have your feedback. Again, I think we do need to do justice to this discussion. We'll need to take more time at the next meeting, I think. That said, welcome other quick comments, feedback on this. And this is, I'll just say that I think it's important that we do, and I know we are taking the time to really build in this language of what is the program and its vision and how it operates, and that continues to pay dividends over time. I've certainly found it in the coalition's work to know what is the grounds of how this operates and why are we doing it the way that we're doing it, and taking that intentional thought time is super important, because it will have its long-term impact just continually. So my thanks to Chris for doing this draft right now. My proposal will be is that we won't vote on the guidelines now, given the time constraints and that we are at the time end, but that we'll come back to this at our next meeting. And any final comments, public thoughts, announcements? This is a moment to before we sign off. Thank you all. I appreciate you all and your time and investment in this work. May it be a peaceful rest of the afternoon and evening until we see each other next. Looking forward to then. Bye-bye.